This is Kevin Harrington, original shark from Shark Tank, inventor of the infomercial, and you're listening to Jamy Bechler from Success is a Choice. Thank you.
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today's guest won 11 national championships at UCLA. No, I'm not talking about the great John Wooden, even though our guest was friends with the Wizard of Westwood. Today's guest is Sue Enquist. Coach Enquist won more than 83% of her games as UCLA's head softball coach, which ranks number one in NCAA Division I history. Nobody in the sport of softball has won more national championships than her 11. She is a member of the International Women's Sports Hall of Fame, and it is our honor to have Sue Enquist joining us today. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Well, Coach, how did you win so many games? How were you so successful at UCLA over the years and won 11 national championships both as a player and a coach? What was your secret? Did you have a secret sauce?
One of the greatest things we were able to do is recruit amazing families, and they raised their student athletes to be highly accountable. They had a strong foundation of values that drove them every day, and they learned to manage failure recovery quite easily because they had perspective that the game was just a game and it didn't define them.
Who are some of the coaches today that you most admire? When you look at some of the best coaches, regardless of sport, who are some of the coaches that stand out to you?
Oh, I've always been a big fan of Gino Ariema's and Tara Vanderveer. I think those are two individuals that have sustained success over time in terms of how they run their programs, and their virtues, to me as an outsider, appear to be timeless, and they're successful. Their student athletes have a good experience going through the institution. No, they're not going to win it every year, but they have built a program with a system that puts the person first and the athlete second. So I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for those two individuals from afar.
Well, you were a great player at UCLA and a great coach. You even batted, I believe, over 400 for your whole career at UCLA. What was harder, being a great player or being a great coach?
Oh, well, I appreciate those compliments. I feel like as a coach, I'm still learning, and the most challenging is being a coach because you are trying to get a group of people to become in alignment around a set of daily values that they can relate to, and more importantly, they can implement day to day. And then you hope that the people that are side by side with each other will take care of each other during the struggle. And that's very difficult because as a coach, you have to give up a lot of control to allow that to happen.
The late, great evangelist Billy Graham, he once said, a coach can impact more young people in 1 year than most people can do in a lifetime. I heard you say when you spoke, watching you online, you said that in the early part of your career, you spent maybe a little bit too much time worrying about wins and losses. What was kind of the turning point for you when you decided to make more of a true difference in your players' lives?
I think the biggest difference was, I stood at a really interesting juncture of the sport. I entered in as a freshman, and UCLA was a club sport. We had no uniforms. We wore the men's track team practice T-shirts, and watched the sport grow in popularity and importance. And when I was in the middle of my career as a co-head coach, and the margin for error was so small, you have a tendency to just pound the ground to get the most out of your student athletes when you lose sight of who they are. And early in my career, it was just about W's. It was about winning, win. And I had a turning point in my career. And sadly, it was really at the end of my career. If I look at my career, 27 years, it was really the second half, mainly the last quarter of my career, where I really started to listen to what the players needed. And that was a turning point for me, was become a great listener and facilitator of the conditions they need, and they will perform to their potential, which is really what you're trying to do as a coach.
So even though you were very successful, you've been doing a lot with working with different teams or different people since then. If you could go back and do it again, if you were to go back as a coach, what have you learned since your retirement that would help you become a better coach?
Well, there's two things to think about. I'm 12 years into my retirement. So if you were to look at 2018, there's no way I would coach the same way because the athlete's different. So the things that I did when I was coaching, they would not be efficient to live a vertical hierarchy, my way or the highway, get on the train, you're either in or you're out. That really bravado, one leader mentality is irrelevant today. And there are very few people in the country that could even get away with that unless they're winning every game. And we know no one's doing that. But when you look today at what the best people are doing, and I would model after what the best are doing in 2018, because I think it's most relevant to not talk about what I would change back then, but how I would change today if you threw me back into coaching. And the players would have a much bigger voice in setting the daily behaviors, expectations, accountability system in their program. So they would feel like they have more control. And if they have more control over the tempo and the environment, there's naturally more of a buy-in. And then I would ask the players to set up their own accountability system to take care of one another at practice and on game day. Now, obviously, it's the head coaches and the assistant coaches to draw up the framework and to share what it looks like and doesn't look like in totality. You know, how do we represent ourselves in the community, on the campus, in the classroom, on the ball field? Of course, that is a collective effort by the leadership. Where there's a gap, where I see a gap today, is when I'm consulting with coaches. Many of these coaches are in the top 15 in the country. And they say, God, my kids just don't get it. And I remember a point in my career when I said that. And Papa Wooden used to always say to me, it is our responsibility for the kids to get it. And the first time he ever said that to me, it completely switched my thinking, because the coach out there that says the kids just don't get it today, the kids today, they don't get it. Well, Papa taught me that means you don't get it. Because if they don't get it, he used to always say it's like going into their house of learning. If the front door's locked, they don't get it, go to the side window, knock on that window, go to the back window, knock on the back. You must keep working on how to reach that student athlete. And the fastest way to reach somebody is to ask more questions versus reprimanding. And that's how we're wired as coaches. We measure gaps. We see a gap, we tell everybody about the gap. We see a gap, we tell everybody about the gap. That was me. I see a gap, I'm going to tell you what you're not doing. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Why don't I ask them how we could close the gap of their practice behavior? And then once you start to listen more, you create the conditions for them to be comfortable in their environment. When they're comfortable in their environment, they become possessive of their environment. And when you have a player that is possessive of their practice environment and their game environment, you're just a value add. And that's coaching utopia. Is this program has become bigger than me, and my players are the stewards of the program.
We'll get back to this interview with Coach Enquist in just a moment. Many of the same principles that Coach is teaching to softball coaches and players today, as well as when she was winning championships at UCLA, are discussed in our book, The Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. Developing individual and team leadership is crucial to success, both on and off the playing fields. So please visit theleadershipplaybook.com to learn more about this impactful book. And now back to more great nuggets of wisdom from Hall of Fame coach Sue Enquist. Well, you talk about Coach Wooden, or Papa Wooden, as you call him. Other than, what he taught you or relayed to you about, help them to understand, help them to get it. Was there a couple traits or one or two things that kind of stood out about him and made him special in your opinion as a coach?
I can only speak to my experience with Papa. When you talk to Bill Walton, he's got a different feeling about Papa. Or Val Condos, our great gymnastics coach, right? What I loved about him was his cutting honesty. So for me, I'd call him up, I'd have a problem. Papa, the kids don't get it. They're not motivated, or they second guess themselves and they just don't get it. And he goes, gosh, Sue, it sounds to me like you don't love the game unconditionally. And the day he said that, I didn't really understand what he meant. And I asked him, I go, well, what do you mean by that? I go, I love this game. I'm committed to this game for life. And he says, well, you only love them on their good days. And it stopped me in my tracks, because he was exactly right. Most coaches, including Sue Enquist, I only love my team on the good days. And then on the bad days, it turned into us and them. They don't get it. But, we beat that team 12-0. It's all about us. And we're doing good things. We're having a bad day. They don't get it. Until they want to go ahead and go to the next level, until they want to go ahead and commit, come early and stay late, until they understand champion, that is antiquated language. But Papa taught me to be in it with them when they're not good, and you get out of it the quickest. So I learned, I can remember one year we were ranked 1, and I basically ran us into the ground, and we dropped to 14 in the country. Now you gotta understand, everyone's rolling their eyes like, that's a nice problem, but it's all relative to your expectations of your program. So we were at that time a program that had never been ranked below 5 in the country, in the history of the program. And now I've run us down to the 14th in the country. So that's a huge drop for us. And I can remember, if it wasn't for Papa reminding me to go down there with them, be in the junk with them. And I can remember looking those kids in the eye and go, you know what? We're bad. We're all bad. Amanda, my backup right fielder, not good. Momo, a starting second baseman, not good. Sue Enquist, head coach, not good. But I'm going to tell you something, you guys. We're the best crappy team in the country. And no one will be able to beat us on our worst day compared to their worst day. So Papa taught me how to hold kids accountable when we're not good by putting yourself in it with them, and then projecting success if we stay together. And so for me, I built what I call the confidence bridge. It was identifying how we got to the point of being great, identifying how we fell and tripped, we stubbed our toe, and then to project future success if we get back to the values that we live every day. And that peace of mind that you can give the kids that before it's known is the most powerful for kids. For me to look you in the eye and you're for the weekend and say, listen, I saw what you did on Tuesday afternoon working that oppo. I saw what you did moving that runner guy, putting the ball in play. No different. In this moment, step in the box, and all I want you to do is let your eyes do all the work. And I'll see you on the other side of your RBI. That's how kids start to believe in themselves, is when someone can document they're worthy and then project success. Because in my experience, I've never heard kids say, I can't stand my coach. She believes in me too much.
Great insights. I love the Clemson head coach, Dabo Sweeney, who kind of took offense when somebody said he's an overachiever. And he said, no, I'm not an overachiever. I'm an overbeliever. And I think you've seen that in the Clemson program through the years. And especially if you listen to any Dabo Sweeney interviews, man, he absolutely loves on his kids.
Yeah. And Papa hated it when people would say overachieve, and Papa hated it when people said, he hated it when people said, oh, my kids gave 110%. He couldn't stand that. But he felt that overachievement was man's way of building ceilings on youth. And it made sense, right? The first time I heard Papa say overachievement is a word that never should be used, because we never know the full potential of any one individual. And so that was powerful. At that point in my career, I'd never really put much thought to that, but that really stained my brain that I'm never going to put limits on kids.
That's great.
And you know, I have a fun story. It takes a little time, but I'll try to be concise. So I apologize to the listeners, but I'm going to give you an example of that. I was never a type of coach that would take somebody that I didn't see the skill potential and say, you can do X, Y, and Z. I never had Papa's influence at that point. And Papa taught me, don't ever put a ceiling on somebody's intention. And I had a kid that came into the program, and she was a defense-only player. She just played defense, came in, she was scrappy, earned a spot in the lineup, was number 8 hitter. And she came to me and she said, Coach, next year I want to work to hit a home run. And I said, you know, my old self would go, you know, you're a vintage 180 hitter and you hit 3 bouncers through the 3-4 hole, right? Like, I did a skill assessment and built a ceiling. But Papa's influence allowed me to go, okay, this is what it's going to take, right? So we spent all season, twice a week, we would go into the cage after practice, and we would go around the Pac-12, and we would pretend we're at every stadium. And when I worked the count, and we'd go through the count, and she'd live it, and then she'd hit this shot, and we'd go, that's it, that's the home run. And we lived that all year. Of course, she never hit a home run. Little tiny kid, Monique Mejia was her name. And gosh, I'll never forget it. In the World Series, she hit a home run. It took my breath away at third base. I went crazy, almost to the point where, like, wow, what's happening with UCLA coach? She's seen plenty of home runs. But to see that kid have a dream come true on just a simple home run is one of my most favorite stories about don't ever put a ceiling on a kid's talent.
That's a great point. Just try to, as coaches, we should be trying to add value as much as possible, yeah, and lift people up. And you also made a great point. It's not about cheerleading to the effect of, you know, just, hey, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. It's actually putting that to action and helping them to do it. And also, as you talked about projecting, talking about you can do this because you did this last week, or I've seen you do this, or because of this, this, and this. And so that's a great point.
Yeah, kids today, they're so sharp. In my experience, they're so sophisticated. And if you turn on that blah, blah, throwing out fake bouquets that you're all it, the kids have such a great sniffer. They can smell BS a mile away. And so those coaches that aren't comfortable being vulnerable in front of their team, just start with this one little step. Even if you're scrambled in your head, come to practice and say, you guys, you know what? I had a crappy day. I'm only at 90%, but I promise to give you 100% of my 90. Now you've given authority to the players that I know you're going to trust me as your coach, that even if I'm not 100%, I'll give you 100% of what I have. If we could create those conditions for our players to come up, and that's what we did at UCLA, my kids would come out and say, Coach, I'm at 60%. I commit to give 100 of the 60. And I'd say, Tasha, I'll take that 100% of your 60. And then practice is a release valve, and we're not tightening it up during those 2 hours. My God, coaches, these kids have been brought up where the government cheats, the church is creepy, the workplace isn't safe, their parents are down their throat, they have to commit when they're in 6th grade. Can all the coaches out there just exhale and just try to be a new millennial? That's not that great of a place to be in, because anybody that's over 50, you know, we grew up in rainbows and unicorns. So I just wish more coaches could check themselves, that we're saying they're weak sauce, and I'm saying everywhere they look, there's no stability, including 51% of the families are divorced. So Can we just cut the new millennials some slack and stop saying, oh, this generation? Because everybody says, this generation every 20 years. That's the fact of life.
Well, every coach listening to this right now, they probably have players that are maybe motivated or that generate a lot of momentum, positive momentum for their team, but they also have those people at the bottom, some people that maybe are energy takers or maybe could bring other people down. What's your advice for coaches on how to deal with some of those players?
Oh, man, we had a simple rule, the 33% rule. There's a third of the kids that are just going to suck the life out of you, whether you love them or hate them or do whatever. It's just part of the deal. And then you got middle third. They love the deal when you're winning, and then they turn into bottom thirds when you're losing. And then you have top third. And the goal is to manage middle and top. That's 2/3. And then your bottoms, it's a counterintuitive plan. But with the bottom third, you actually have to check in with them and let them do all the talking. You know, Papa taught me when two people aren't on the same page, we both become competitive and we want to win the argument. When in reality, you want to find out where their reality foundation is and start the conversation there. So for those competitive coaches out there, and I was one of them, please believe I was a cluster so much. It was unbelievable. But Papa taught me, think of it as a card game. Let them come into the office. Let them show their cards, even though it's super unrealistic. And pick one card and say, let's see if we can get better just in this area, me and you, today. Short-term goals are the most relevant for the new generation. Please let's not talk about the next month and the next year, and I want to be a national champion, All-American. Can we just talk about, can you get 1% better in the next 30 minutes? And then you have to tell me what it looks like and tell me how to execute it. And then I'll visit with you after practice, and we'll take that step, celebrate that step. And the next thing you know, sometimes those bottom thirds become some of your greatest leaders.
Well, even though you retired a few years ago, you are still a major player on the softball scene, very influential. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're doing right now in softball to help move it forward.
Well, two things right now. I've spent the first 5 years in retirement. I wanted to research and go back to the grassroots and find out what the problem was. So I really became a listener for 5 years and did research. And then I found out that we have 3 pain points and 3 demographics. The parents are disorganized. They don't know how to navigate all of it. Training, development, mental, path to college, academics. The coach isn't educated. They don't know the principles, how to train, how to run a practice, how to lead the youth. Because let's remember, people, that volunteer coach is just a dad. He's a baker. He's a banker. He's a teacher that raised his hand. So can you please just cut some slack there? And then the athlete, they're not having fun anymore. So onesoftball.com is telling the story to the parent, the player, and the coach, providing solutions with our best-in-class national champions, Olympians, thought leaders, subject matter experts in the area of character development, technical development, and a path to college. And so I'm excited about that property because that group has allowed me to help form a brand new initiative. It's a health and wellness initiative called HAWC, HAWC, Health and Wellness Consortium, and pulling together our top associations to build content that gets dripped down directly to our youth coaches in the areas of anxiety and depression and suicide, mixed in with building character valued programs and how you do that with the messaging of our player ambassadors and our mentorship programs. And so we just launched that a month ago. Sometimes the biggest tragedies can be the impetus for change. And we lost little Emma Pangelinen, a 13-year-old here in Southern California. The new face of depression isn't that person struggling in the corner that's shy and quiet and a square peg. The new face of depression is your most popular, beautiful, smart, talented kid that's trying to get into a great institution. And so all those parents out there, be intentional and ask the questions and be engaged. And I tell parents all the time, make sure you're checking their Google search. I know that sounds like an invasion of privacy, but we know now that there's so many kids that are living this dark burden of being overwhelmed with expectations. And so the Hawk Consortium wants to provide an outlet for these kids to be heard, to teach our parents the right protocols, and to help our coaches facilitate conditions where kids see sport as an outlet and not a wrecking ball.
Well, we'll definitely be sure to put those in the show notes so people can check that out and get involved. Well, Coach, thank you so much. Great insights. I took tons of notes on this episode, so thanks so much for doing that and for joining us. I know you already were out surfing this morning, but I hope you have a great rest of the day and have fun surfing tomorrow morning as well.
Oh, Jamie, thanks for your time today, and I just want to say congratulations on all the great work you're doing. Please keep up the good work.
Coach Enquist is an absolute legend in the coaching profession. 11 national titles as a player and a coach at UCLA. That's amazing. This interview was one of my favorites, and I took a bunch of notes. I wish that I heard this interview years ago when I was coaching. If you are a coach, you should be inspired to coach up your athletes after listening to her. So please, help share this interview with others. Let them know, email them, text them, but also leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Ratings and reviews are the lifeblood of a podcast and help keep them free. It's one of the best ways to help others find not only this episode, but others as well. So thanks so much, and until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?